Nothing, quite literally nothing could have prepared me for the morning I woke up and realized I was CEO.
Julia Hartz is the co-founder, CEO of Eventbrite. In 2018, Julia led Eventbrite to go public on the New York Stock Exchange, achieving a market valuation of $1.7 billion. This made her among the very few women who lead successful initial public offering of a technology startup.
We pitched 27 VC firms and we got 27 no's. We didn't have a company. I just turned 30. I'm like, if I'm not actually bringing value to Eventbrite, like, I don't think I should stay.
You kind of started in TV initially.
My first internship that I landed was on the set of Friends during like the heyday. I think it's like PTSD from this internship. Jennifer Aniston exuded kindness in a way that I think left a mark on me as well. And I've never told this story before, but
Julia, I can't wait to speak with you.
Thank you for having me on. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
It's going to be epic. And again, I've been following your journey for so long, Julia. And again, I think unless somebody lived under the rock, they know Eventbrite. But I want to kind of take you back in time a little bit to you kind of started in TV initially, like very, very different thing, I think. Talk to me a little bit. Like, how did you start? Why TV? Take me there for a second.
I was really attracted to storytelling from a very early age. I was a dancer growing up and would perform and compete in different competitions and stuff. And so I really loved the connection with story and narrative and audiences. And I didn't know how to parlay that into a career when I started college. And, I found myself actually had interned as a teenager for a local news station. And Dina Ruiz was the person that I was shadowing. And she was like this icon, local anchor personality. And I thought, well, maybe I could parlay my entertainment chops into something like news broadcast. And, Diane Sawyer and Katie Couric and Jane Pauley were my heroes. And so I went to school in Southern California and I majored in news broadcasting. And I remember showing up the first day, with my books and my backpack and my student debt and my loans and my 2 jobs to pay for school. And I was sitting in class and I was looking around at like the other 12 people, realizing I wanted it the least. And because I was this, I'd grown up in performance halls and audition spaces, I knew that if you want it the least out of a group of people, like you're in the wrong place. And I just was like, oh, I am not going to go to South Dakota and read the weather for 2 years. And like these people are. And so I almost immediately pivoted. I took my first little leap and I went I changed my concentration under the major to television development and production, which was amazing that was an option at the school I was attending. Again, it was in Southern California, so a little bit more normal. But that really opened up a world for me that I, had never experienced. And I came to realize pretty quickly that I could manipulate my schedule to have all my classes happen in the evening, which was unique to the university I was attending. And then I could work to pay for school and I could intern. And these internships were kind of this open field because I went to Pepperdine. So you have like Pepperdine and then all the like big schools like UCLA, USC. We were kind of the smaller fish. And so your resume coming from Pepperdine for an internship would like end up on the top. So I figured this out and I started applying for really, really in-demand internships. And my first internship that I landed was on the set of Friends during like the
Which
heyday.
is incredible.
It was incredible. And, I just took from the whole entirety of my school career from like the second semester after I figured out what I wanted to try to figure out to do. I just took these little leaps. And I went and I basically deduced what I wanted to really do in my first career by trying different things. And so I was an intern on the set of Friends.
But let's talk about that internship actually, because that's kind of a cool story. So
it is cool. I mean, I arrived and was like, I don't know that I've ever been as overwhelmed as I felt that first day to be, on the Warner Brothers lot, on the hottest TV show set in the world. Like, it was a big deal that they were all making $1 million an episode, and Jen Aniston was still married to Brad Pitt. Like, it was a crazy time. And so I arrived, and I'm literally the lowest person on the totem pole. Literally. And I get handed a wireless phone, like a big, I'm dating myself, but a wireless phone. And yeah, it's like a cord. And I get told, your job is to answer this phone and go find whoever is looking for, or go find the person that this person, whoever's calling, is looking for. To this day, I have a primal fear of speaking on the phone. I think it's like PTSD from this internship, because anybody who had the set phone number for friends at that time was neither patient and many times not kind.
With a lot of ego.
It was terrifying. It was terrifying. It was so terrifying. I could still remember it. It was like, this is Ari, get me Jen. And I'm like, oh God, I gotta go. I'd like go to her dressing room and like knock on the door and be like, it's Ari, And it really instilled in me this idea that like, making something great it's a practice in connection and honestly kindness and perseverance. And it was so grueling. Their schedule was incredible. And actually out of everyone, and I've never told this story before, but out of everyone, Jennifer Aniston was just exuded kindness in a way that I think left a mark on me as well.
Wow.
That was so authentic. And she was, such a big star, and dealing with her own stuff. And it was just like to see her be kind to even the lowest of the totem pole.
That's amazing.
Yeah, give me a great role model. But I definitely knew leaving that internship at the end of the school year that I was not going to go into television production. And so then I went and took a little leap the next semester to the opposite end of the spectrum, which was the script library at New Regency. And there, my job was to wait in a library full of scripts of every great movie you've ever known and wait for someone to need a photocopy of a script. And then I photocopied the script. So most of my time, I was just reading these epic films and, reading the scripts and then seeing the movie in your mind as you're reading the script, like made me realize that so much happens between the page and the edit. And, these movies take years and years and years to come to life. And I realized that didn't satiate my need for velocity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I kind of realized that like, oh God, I don't know if I could like work on one thing for this long. It would be excruciating. So then I leapt to MTV and I joined the series development department in Santa Monica.
Let me stop you for a second. When you kind of knew, when you were studying in college, you kind of knew that you don't want to be the person reading whatever you said, the weather, right? Like in North Carolina. But when you leaped from one role to the other, do you feel like you knew that this is it? Or did you kind of think about it as an experiment?
I thought about it as an experiment. I mean, it's very different today, but these were unpaid internships. Like I was not making money. I had to work in addition to this quote unquote job. So I thought of it as like a learning opportunity.
Incredible.
And, I think what was great about it is that it was a short period of time. So it was a semester long typically until I landed at MTV. Then it became a multi-year situation. But it was like these bite-sized moments and you could kind of dip in and experience this world that gave you so much insight. And, I'm the kind of person that picks up a lot in between the main moments of a moment. So, I'm feeling the energy. I'm, noticing the details and the nuances. And so I did really gather a lot about what it was like to be in each of these types of environments. I was so lucky. I mean, again, this was almost just a hack that I was at the smaller school of the main feeder schools into these internships, and that they had such robust intern programs, which I just don't know if that's the case these days. So I just looked at it as an experiment to try to figure out what I wanted to do. And when I landed at MTV, the thing that I loved about where I landed was it was a blend of business and creativity. So, television development is like venture capital in Silicon Valley or in technology, where you're listening, the executives are listening to pitches all day from creatives and then deciding which idea they want to invest in. And, you build a slate from that. And that slate goes through these different development pipelines, just like a startup does. And it just so happened, it was so fortuitous that when I was assigned to one of the 4 main series development departments. 2 were on the East Coast at the time. 2 were on the East Coast, 2 were on the West Coast. And I had been assigned to the one that had been known for road rules and real world. And so they kind of had this legacy and annuity to try new ideas. And I was interning on the day that we received a pilot, like a demo from these nutty dudes, and they called themselves Jackass. And I remember my job as the intern was to sit in the tape room. Now, the tape room had 6 banks of VHS machines, which to those, I think everyone understands what a VHS is, who's listening. Yeah. But I'd put tapes in each one, and then I'd put a tape in the mother one, and then I'd hit record, and I would record these tapes that came in so that I could distribute them to the executives. And I remember watching it and being like, oh my God, this is insane. And so I label the tapes, and I'm like, you might not want to watch this one during lunch. I'm like trying to be helpful, to the executives. Like, you might want to wait until you've digested your food. And that was the beginning of a journey that was multi-years, because it was my full senior year. And then I started working there when I graduated. But it was such a ride to watch something come, be this cultural icon that created its own zeitgeist, be so out there, and really to be a part of something that was so unique. And, it's interesting because from my perspective, now looking back, we took that demo and we spent a bunch of money on recreating it. And the pilot is not nearly as good as the original demo was, I was just so and so that was a lesson of even with the most amount of resourcing, you can't replicate the original intent. The blueprint, right, for what they were doing. And these guys knew exactly what they wanted to do. Every week we'd get on a call with OSHA and standards and practices and the legal department and, and then our department and then the guys, and they would be going through in detail the skits that they were, the stunts that they wanted to do. And it was just, so mind-blowing. They were very, very, I think, renegades for sure. So that was my first real job.
What do you think are some of the biggest things that you got from it? It sounds, again, for mere mortals, hearing some of these incredible places, right? The Friends, the MTV, it sounds incredible. But what do you think are some of the things that you took with you from that?
Well, actually, as I said, that was my first real job. I was lying because I've been working since I was 15 straight. So,
a coffee, I want to hear about that
but
too.
in my first post-college job, I think I learned that kindness is an extremely rare and valuable currency. Again, to have witnessed that kind of raw, authentic kindness from somebody who was, at the top of their game and very everything was very ego driven in that world at that time, and such a crazy time and place that stuck with me. I think the pursuit of perfection in filmmaking and the longevity and willingness to really be resilient and patient, that stuck with me. And then just the conviction and intention of doing something that had never been done before. And, it's
incredible.
The kind of childish creativity and abandonment that was happening in the early days of Jackass was just, it was amazing. And we knew we were onto something that was going to be huge, even though it was so, on the face of it, so distasteful. It struck a chord that was oh, this is going to be great.
That's so funny. So when did you decide to move to FX? Why?
So I graduated from intern to assistant, and still to this day, my first boss is one of my best friends. And actually introduced me to my husband. So she married my husband's college classmate, and we met at the wedding. So I had these incredible role model in her, and then, moved on to become like a junior executive or something. And then FX came calling, and I was looking at what they were doing. They had just hit, kind of this new tone with The Shield, and they were producing incredible scripted content. And it just so happens, it's super fortuitous that I decided to join and make the leap. And it was really scary. And I'll never forget, like, leaving the kind of safety of this crazy family at MTV to go to like this more corporate place. And I remember like how scary that was. But I arrived right when John Landgraf was appointed the head of the department. And he's gone on to make some of the most iconic television of our time. I mean, it's 20 years now. And I just remember being in his presence. I was a junior executive. I was like manager of current series. So my job was to oversee the shows that were already on air, like Nip Tuck, The Shield, and Rescue Me. But going into his office and like being with that team, I was the only woman on the development team in 25.
Oh my God.
But being in that room and really hearing the thought process that went into uncovering these incredible gems and bringing these incredible stories to air and really pushing the envelope. I mean, FX was, at the time, people thought you could only tell the types of stories and show the types of things that, like on HBO. And like FX just basically said, no, we're going to do that on basic cable and, or premium cable, but like way more widely distributed. And just watching that was incredible, and sort of how you define story and narrative and character development, and it was amazing. And so that was such an honor for me to really be there at that time. And I think I was just soaking it all up. But in the midst of that, I met Kevin at this wedding, and that was like, in Hollywood speak, that was a meet cute. And that set my life on this totally different trajectory that
which we'll talk about for sure.
Yeah.
But right before we're going to talk about what happened when you met Kevin, like FX in this entire industry is also really hard, right? Like there's some amazing things that happen with it. And it sounds like you created some incredible connections. But I think there's also a lot of frustration that come with the industry. Like, how do you see that now?
Well, it's been a long time since I've been in the industry, but I think what I experienced was a way of working and a way of creating that was about to get disrupted. And there was this feeling of an uncertainty because TiVo had just come onto the market, and all of a sudden traditional advertising was starting to slow down. Those dollars were starting to become less and less reliable. And so when I went to FX, part of my job was to liaison between the showrunner, who's the ultimate, creator and creative voice of the show, and brands that were going to be doing product placement deals in the show. And that was sort of the stopgap measure to like keep the funding and investment happening for these shows to bring the content to air as everything was shaking out. And it was the very beginning days of streaming, and that uncertainty, it created opportunity. I mean, I met Kevin right when I was making the leap from MTV to FX, and through his eyes. So he has been in Silicon Valley his whole life, and he was creating new companies. And through his eyes and his lived experience, I was starting to see what was about to happen. So I had this crazy duality of like being in, cutting edge of traditional media, and then seeing the first YouTube video, like the wireframes of YouTube before it was even live. So like that for me was this unique and very helpful perspective on what I would ultimately want to do. And like when I think about my life, I think about it a little bit like sliding doors, because if I had not, I actually sat next to Kevin. I asked him to move over at the wedding because I was reading 1 Corinthians in the wedding. If I hadn't done that, it was a huge wedding. These are two of the most dynamic, amazing, likable human beings on the planet. It was a huge wedding. And I had been on blind dates with like more than a few of the guests. And And so they were, the bride and groom were calling it the Super Bowl of dating for me. I was just like, it was a lot of pressure. And I was sort of scared about going up to Reed in the wedding. And I asked him to scoot over. I was 23. I had my act together. I was like a, high functioning 23-year-old. But I was sort of like, what is happening? He starts chatting me up. And if we hadn't met, like, I would definitely still be in Hollywood. I would be, probably a president of a network or something. I mean, I really think that like I would have just stayed and that would have been really amazing. But because this happened, my life got like so incredibly interrupted, or like my path interrupted in this really good way, that I got this other perspective and I got to see over the rainbow, right, into what was actually about to happen. And I had this instinct like, I want to be on the disruptor side. I don't want to be on the disrupted side. Now, in the end, FX fared incredibly well. They really put their heads down and focused on the content and focused on the characters and focused on the creative and pushing the envelope. And oh my God bless them. I'm so proud of what they've done. But underneath all of that, the infrastructure got completely disrupted, right? And so, that leap from 42nd story window office in Fox Plaza, which is Nakatomi Plaza and Die Hard, and, packing my boxes up and telling everybody that I was going up north to like get married, which is so not my story, right? Like I wasn't like going to stop working, obviously, but I did that on a Friday. And on a Monday, I was pushing sawhorses and plywood into a windowless phone closet in Potrero Hill in a warehouse to start a new company that I, had only sort of talked abstractly with Kevin about. It was so me to not take any time to like think about it too much, and certainly not to read the fine print. And I remember thinking like, oh God, what if he's crazy? Like what? Because he seemed so excited about this like unknown that I just I couldn't even fathom what it was going to turn into. But I'm so glad I took that leap. I mean, that was like a grand jeté for sure.
That's a massive leap. So what made you trust that I mean, it's almost like jumping without a parachute, but it doesn't seem like, was it scary? Was it exciting?
So practically speaking, we'd been dating for 2 years and we've gotten engaged, and I'm from the Bay Area and I'm very close to my family. I actually lived with my brother in LA. So I'm really, really close to my family in there, and now we're all back in the Bay Area. But I tried actually to take a little leap. I tried to join a startup that was producing cable TV in the Bay Area called Current TV. And they offered me a job, and the job was like 30% less than my salary that I was making at the time, which was already not a lot. And I came to Kevin, I'm like, I found this job. I got this offer to join the startup, and this is what they offered me. And he's like, he's like, well, you could go make, less than you're worth and work on someone else's idea. And he just like pitched me to come work on a startup with him. And, he had a track record. So like he'd been successful twice before. And, I did trust him, but it's like he acted like it was no big deal. And he's like, come, let's build something together, and we could put all of our savings into it and have no safety net. And I'm like, to be honest, I have blacked out the moment in which I decided that was a good idea. But I think, looking back in hindsight, that I have always been somebody that follows her instinct and her gut and takes that leap. And the joke in my family now, because when you raise teenagers, you become the butt of every joke, and they are like they pick you apart. Like the joke is that I don't read the fine print, and I don't, because I'm like, life's too short. Let's go. Like, bias to action. Let's go. And then I met someone who has 1,000x stronger bias to action than I do. And that was Kevin. And so, he became my mentor and my role model and my coach, and kind of, in ways that were really helpful and profound, because you don't always get that with your partner. And I realized that those early days of starting Eventbrite it was like accelerated grad school for me on, a lot of different topics. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, and we sound very similar in how we make decisions. So it's just so really, really funny. But But tell me, did you already know that it's kind of like an Eventbrite? Did you know that what you're trying to build or not yet?
Yeah. So the history is that Kevin had invested in what became PayPal. He was part of he worked at SGI, then in the heyday, then he started a company with a few ex-SGI people. And then that flipped really quickly. That was during the boom. And so he took what he earned from that and essentially put it all in black, which was he angel invested the entire amount into something called Confinity Labs. And like his parents were beside themselves. And that became PayPal. And so, and it was the part of the PayPal founding group was classmates of his at Stanford. And so, he learned a lot through that front row seat. And one of the things that he was really inspired by was this idea of democratization and how, by making anyone a merchant, you could create this next level of access using technology. So he founded with his partner, Alan Braverman, Xoom, XOOM, which is international money transfer that competes with Western Union to help immigrants send money back to their families better, faster, cheaper. They also founded this idea of ticketing. That was one of the ideas that they kind of threw in using the PayPal API. And it didn't go anywhere because they were working on Xoom, and Xoom got funded by Sequoia Capital and took off, and they needed to put everything else on the back burner. So then Xoom ended up getting acquired by PayPal. So it's like all this, kind of crazy story. But when I was ready to leave Hollywood, he was ready to leave Xoom. And this was really his idea of like, let's get together and see if there's a there. And so quite literally my first day was opening a laptop and Googling how to like create a search engine optimization campaign, and opening the customer support queue for this, like, basically it wasn't even a product. It was like a feature that had been, on like maintenance mode since they had been working on Xoom for the last few years. And what I found was this really passionate group of event organizers who were like, are you guys still there? Like, and so the basis of what they built, we just built on that. And basically we took the customers that were using it, which were mostly tech bloggers who were hosting paid meetups.
Right.
And we used them as the guinea pig. And we just built, our first like founding product principle was acutely observe what your customers are doing. Some may call it stalking. And then make that better, faster, and more effective with whatever product you're building, right? Like, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Make them better. And that's how we started. And it was just, we found a third co-founder who I like to call the bravest man in Silicon Valley for partnering with a couple. Because at the time, that was really rare.
Right.
And like kind of a bad idea by a lot of people's perspective to start with your significant other. He saw the idea very clearly as, he was like engineer by day and photographer by night. And he saw it as an opportunity to give people a way to turn their passion into profit by selling registrations to classes or tickets to events. I had an experience at FX where we were researching a reality show around fandoms and with Morgan Spurlock. And I went to a few different fan events and these really niche meetups. And it changed my life. Like it lodged in the back of my subconscious, this idea that like, even strangers can be in a room together with this incredible, palpable energy around something that they're all collectively passionate about and how special that was. So I wanted to see if we could create something that could enable that.
Right.
So we all came at it from different angles. And then it was just the three of us for 2.5 years or so. And we bootstrapped the company.
And I love that. And I think it was like 2006. And for those listening, PayPal was like the seed of so many capabilities. And so, there's a reason why it's called the PayPal Mafia. It's like right? It's like, at least in Silicon Valley, like
I call it the PayPal Chia Pet. It's like something that like grew, like exponentially. It was incredible to see what came out of that group and that time. And, I think there's been a lot of books written on it or podcasts done on it. But like, I do think to some extent, a lot of the ambition that I've observed from this group was born from the discontent of actually selling the company so early to a larger company, and the like chip on the shoulder of like the work that they had done, that a lot of work that was left to be done and things that they could do differently. And it was very, very special time. I mean, I was very much on the like outskirts of that, but really thinking about, the original intention of Eventbrite. We built it on PayPal. We were really mindful of the fact that we wanted, the idea of microprocessing, of microtransactional processing and democratization of merchant processing to be the basis of how we empowered people to create events and ticket them in a way that was as easy as Gmail. That was really our like North Star in the beginning.
And I love that. And I think that's why Eventbrite picked up so fast, and we'll talk about it in a second. But the beautiful thing, I think, is also you didn't go into this whole, like, you started lean, right? You started with literally 2006, a few people, just the three of you, not a big investment, all the way to an MVP. And I think today there's this big hype of let me raise millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, how do you see like the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Kevin and Alan had to raise tens of millions of dollars to clear the regulatory hurdles to be a money transmitter.
Right.
I mean, a new entrance to the market after 9/11, like they were insane, and they did it, and like the insane do prevail because they did it, and they were one of the only companies to really get through to at scale to be able to be an international remittance company during such a tenuous time. And so, but they had to have all this money on the balance sheet. So, Kevin was like, I want to do this differently. I want to do this lean. Let's just put our money to work. And so we just, lived a true startup life. We didn't take salaries. Obviously, we were fortunate to have money to put into the company. We had our first baby then. Like, those are some of the sweetest times, living in a little half flat and working in this like windowless phone closet and existing off of cup of noodles. But I think, it was a simple time. But we managed to get to product market fit and good traction. I think we were profitable with less than $250,000.
Incredible.
And you just don't hear that anymore. I mean, we all talk about that there's going to be, the first one-person billion-dollar company.
We don't hear a lot of bootstrap. Like, I think we are one of the rare ones.
No, people aren't putting their skin in the game like they used to. And it's there's so much capital. And so I think it's like, it's just a different era, and it's a different set of it. Money doesn't matter. Like it's a different set of priorities. And so, when we raised, we did do like an angel round with family and friends to bridge to the first institutional raise. But when we went out to raise our first round of funding, it was fall of 2008. And we pitched 27 VC firms and we got 27 no's. So thank God we knew how to live on our own means, right? Thank God we knew how to run the company in a way that was capital light. Like that was.
So take me there, because again, I think a lot of people after the third or fourth will kind of say, you know what, maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this doesn't have a chance. What made you guys go again and again and again? Because it's really hard to get these no's. Like it can really take you down. What made you continue?
Yeah, well, again, I think Kevin's infectious optimism kept us afloat. And, we had strong and growing user bases. We had product market fit. We had traction. So it wasn't so much as like this idea won't become a company. It was really around finding the right people to support us along the way. And then the major issue for us was that we went out during the worst possible time. Right. So everybody was like, what is going to happen? So what we did, and I really commend Kevin for this, was we left everybody with our 2009 financial plan, like our projections. And we said, we'll come back next year and check back in. And we did what we said we were going to do. We were like very...
So wait, before there, because you crushed it right after. So wait, before that though, at this point, you have kid, which I think changes a lot in terms of, at least for me, like it changes the perspective. Like I feel like I need to like be a grown-up person now, and I need to be a little more responsibility, and I need to like take, I don't know, like did you at some point freak out that maybe you need stability, maybe you do need the cash in the door, maybe you do need something different? Like, did that scare you at all?
I mean, everything was so unknown, and uncertain that it was, I was pretty terrifying. But we had Emma within 2 years of starting Eventbrite. So it's hard for me to remember a time when we didn't have her as part of the equation.
Right.
And I think in a way that almost made it easier because it was everything was us as a family. We have an incredible network of family and friends around us as well. So we had that support. But there were times when I was like, when's he going to admit that it might not work out? And like, we're going to have to go get jobs, But I think, again, I think serial entrepreneurs especially are missing a chip in their brain that's like this may not work out chip. You know what I mean? And I've like very much learned to live and optimize around that with Kevin. But I think we found this really nice balance where I think, he had the fortitude to keep going, and I had the, innate skills to make everything work. And we combined that together. And I think what ended up happening in the background between the time we went out and got rejected to the time that we closed, we had multiple offers and closed our round with Sequoia, was that the world changed. It flipped on its head, and so many people lost their jobs, and so many people turned to Eventbrite to host workshops, to network, to teach skills, to,
Amazing.
And so almost exactly what Renaud saw happened during 2009, that people could turn passion into profit, and that we had one of our best years ever. And so when we went back to the VCs to check in a year later, that was like unheard of. And there was so much, it was like, there was still like a lot of broken glass on the ground. Like it was like wreckage from this financial crisis. And we like came in all, we did what we said we were going to do. And that was just like, that was the winning strategy. And so we closed our first round with Sequoia Capital then at the end of 2009.
It's incredible. And I love that story because I remember like there was like, I think this is where I started hearing about you guys. And it's like, it was like just amazing snowball. And then there's like these 8 years that you're working with Kevin. How was that? And then, what made the difference to start becoming a CEO?
Actually, we never had this conversation, so I don't actually know, but I have a feeling that Kevin knew that I could be a CEO someday. And so, I think in a way, like he was definitely helping me understand what it would take to be a great CEO. But we are such a strong complementary partnership. I mean, I think, what we figured out is we asked our friends, like our first friends that we sort of established when I moved up was Michael and Sochi Birch, who are, entrepreneurs in their own right. They started Birthday Alarm and Bebo. They sold Bebo to AOL. They've taken on a number of different projects from there, including a physical gathering space, The Battery. I mean, they've been working together since they were in college. And we asked them, we were at a pub, which is very British, very Michael. And I was like, what's your secret? And so she just said, we just divide and conquer. We never work on the same thing at the same time. And I remember picturing like, how hard it is to sort of work with your partner on like a computer, like you're both like trying to control the like mouse or whatever, and just how like resonant that was for me. And so we just took that as our golden rule. And so we worked on totally different parts of the business. He worked on product. I worked on people, on finding people through marketing, on serving people through customer support, on hiring eventually, and what kind of company we would become. And Renaud built everything, and created the infrastructure for us to do what we did. And then we all QA'd by working directly with our customers. So it was this really magical setup in a way that of course there was friction, but we just figured like, if it ever impeded on our lives or our relationship, that one of us would leave, but we never agreed on who would leave. Like he said he would leave and I said I would leave. So, and there's like fun stories. Like we decided like, hey, if we ever get in an argument at the office, we'll turn off the lights lie down on the floor and hold hands and talk through it. This was before we had employees, but we were in a sort of organic co-working space with a bunch of other startups. And so they would die when they looked in the little windowless phone closet and we were like lying on the ground, holding hands in the dark. So our lives being built under the auspices of working together was really natural. And I think it was a lot harder to go the other direction to, when Kevin left the company and I took on the role of CEO, it was really heartbreaking for us. And I have to say, I don't know that we're over it. I think it's really hard, and while it's allowed him to go do really exciting new things and create new products and, back a bunch of entrepreneurs through his fund, it's hard sometimes because we think back to those days of when it was just us in a windowless phone closet.
So 2016, you're taking on the CEO, and as far as I'm concerned, and maybe I'm wrong, I think the difference between number one and number anything else is light years away. Did you feel that no matter how ready you are, I feel like it's a whole different atmosphere, responsibility, fear, sleepless nights? Where did that catch you?
I think reinvention is not just one leap. It's like a habit, right? So by the time I took on this role, I had reinvented myself a few times or gone through this process. And so I figured okay, I'm going to take this role on. I'm going to figure it out. What I tell people all the time, especially people who are trying to figure out how they're going to have kids and be successful in their career, is you got here somehow. Your talent, your skills, your ability got you here. You're going to get to the next place, even with, shipping a human.
Kids.
And I thought, I'll just approach it step by step. We have a great, roll off both from Sequoia Capital is again, a dear investor, 14-year board member, was right behind me with his hand on my back. Nothing, quite literally nothing could have prepared me for the morning I woke up and realized I was CEO. And after the first week, I turned to Kevin and I said, I have been operating in Candyland and you have been operating in Tron. And I don't even know how we were operating in the same company. But you made it look so easy. And I am in a totally different place. And what I realized after, some time was it was just all about my mental capacity to mental resiliency, to put the feeling of overwhelming, crushing responsibility, somewhere where I could actually hold it, to think about what I needed to do to be a great leader. I mean, I do think it's such a strange and heady title and responsibility, and I'm glad that there are some models I was just thinking about Netflix where co-CEO-ship is actually working, because I do think that it's sort of too much sometimes to put on one person in a way that doesn't really make sense. But it's huge, and it's such a mental, thing. So, but now I wake up every morning and I'm how lucky am I to be able to be the CEO of the company that I helped start almost 2 decades ago,
right?
And I just come at it from a place of gratitude. But that feeling of just the weight of the world doesn't really ever go away.
Right. But talk to me about one of those sleepless nights. And the reason why I'm going there for a second, I think a lot of our audience is at that sleepless nights. I've had my share of sleepless nights. And I think sometimes it's really, really hard to get yourself out of the rut and say, where the heck are the salaries coming from? Where is the next money coming from? What on earth am I doing? How do you cope with that as Julia and as a CEO?
I can think of three sleepless nights, and 2 of them involve a nightmare that involve roll-off. So it's funny because that's a joke that I have with them. Whenever I'm the voice of truth, it's it comes through you as a character in my dream. It's weird. I've never had any other dreams with him in it. So it's that's just such a sign. So the first one was when we raised from Sequoia, and I had a dream that Sequoia was great, you're cool, but we don't really need a president, and you're just married to the CEO, and you need to step aside. And I woke up in a cold sweat the next morning, and I was Kevin, I we had the baby, we had raised the round. I sort of had this nebulous title of president. Like everything about the dream was real, except for the fact that Sequoia didn't ask me to step aside. But I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like if I'm not actually, I just turned 30. I'm like, if I'm not actually bringing value to Eventbrite, like I don't think I should stay. And that led to me realizing that we were about to scale from a team of 30 to a company of 200 or so in a year, because we knew exactly where we needed to scale at that point. We had such, strong product market fit. And that most of the companies in our vintage had really like gone off the rails, hyper scaling, and they had to go back and fix the culture and go through all these different things. And I thought, you know what if I can make scaling Eventbrite my mission to figure out what kind of company we want to be? And that gave me a really clear focus. The second nightmare I had was after I was done doing that, and we kept getting all these awards for best places to work, and we had this Chronicle article come out about our new office, and it was like, it's the Disneyland of startups. I had another nightmare, and it was from Roll Up Again, who was like, congratulations, you've created the happiest, most mediocre company on the planet. And we were about to like miss our plan for the first time that year. And I'd been so focused on people and happiness and hadn't been as focused on like focus and discipline and productivity. I hadn't figured out the two sides of this yet. I'd only been focused on the like building a great culture and everybody being, kind to one another and caring for one another, which I'm very glad I did. But even then I needed to like balance it out. So I focused on that, and that was really leading into like the era of becoming CEO. And then, we took the company public in 2018, and then COVID happened, and I had another nightmare. Roll-Off was not in it. That literally the company was gone. Like it was just gone. And it felt like losing a child in this dream. And I woke up and literally had a text from our CFO that said, it's here. And like a screenshot of our Tableau dashboard showing this little line of revenue dip down. It was like early March 2020. And we were the tip of the spear. We went from a 14-year-old company in the making to 14 days of free fall that went below that line that we, like our Tableau dashboards broke because we were generating more refunds than revenue. And so we didn't have a company. And that dream led me to actually calling my team together. It was after we'd all gone home, like March 11th or whatever. And, we were all trying to figure out working from home. We're on Zoom and people's kids and dogs are everywhere. And it's like, it's chaos.
And all the events are shutting down.
And
like
everything's stopped.
Everything
the entire basis of our business has evaporated. CDC is now saying you can't gather with more than 10 people. I mean, it's crazy. And, I'm like, first, like, we all have to stop apologizing for our dogs and kids because they're going to like internalize that and it's going to scar them. So let's just like make a policy, like don't apologize for your kids. They could be we're all in this together. And the second thing I said was, given what you know about this business, what would you do if you had to do it all over again? And I didn't realize at the time, like that was the essential question. My instinct was just to say, okay, we are ending. Like this era of Eventbrite is done. We will be there on the other end for our customers, our creators, when they're rebuilding their businesses, but we can't look the same. So how are we going to make the most of this crisis, and how are we going to rebuild the company? Because it's gone. Like that dream made me really understand that it was gone. And so we sketched out, what we would do if we could do it all over again, given all the wisdom that we had about the business. And we created almost just like a one-pager by the end of the meeting. And then I was like, let's go do that. Let's go build that company. And, we had to make a lot of really hard decisions, but we had this North Star of like, when you're not thinking about layoffs or budgets or losing your job or, all the scariness that was around us, and you could just focus on, what if you had a new lease on life? Like, what would you do differently? That was like, I have to say I'm pretty proud of myself for doing that because that really helped us move forward fast. I mean, very quickly.
I mean, you reinvented the entire business around online and events online, right? Like,
We did. Yeah. Yeah. And even like further below, the surface, there was all sorts of infrastructure and product work that we wanted to do. I remember calling our head of engineering and being like, rip and replace everything that you've been afraid to touch because we can't be down. We're a global business. We ticket events in 180 countries. There's never a time that you could be down. I'm like, go do that right now. I'm like, bless the engineers who did that and sort of ripped out some of the old piping. But we threw away our roadmap. We focused on supporting creators with ways that they could stay connected with their community. Part of that was online events. Part of it was, offering credits to future events. We really thought differently about who we were building for, who our core customer would be coming out of the pandemic. Our core thesis was that rather than focus on getting the larger customers, back up and running, which were going to be like the venues were going to be the last to open. Big festivals were really, really in dire straits, was to focus on the mid-market repeat customer who's hosting frequent events, because those would be the customers who had communities that would stick together. And that was the right call. That for us really anchored us against a North Star that helped progress our product roadmap, even despite all the uncertainty, and then also lock us in with a customer who ended up becoming a really strong recurring revenue stream. And I think by focusing on the creator connection with their audience, we were able to actually advance the consumer side of our marketplace and really build trust there. So I think the lesson there is if you're given the opportunity to reinvent, take it.
Right.
It's so rare,
Right.
So I'm glad we took it. It was painful. We certainly didn't get it all right, but the opportunity to go through that and to come out the other end as a platform that could scale once again and could support creators is something I'm really proud of.
And you should be. And my question maybe would be like, a lot of people want to reinvent themselves, but because of the uncertainty that comes with it, because you don't know all the journey, right? You don't have all the answers. You just have this clear idea that you probably need to adapt and you probably need to do something else. But how do you decide?
I think it sounds so cliche, but at the end of the day, we just follow the customer. We just make sure that we are thinking through every decision that I make and everything that I prioritize. Let's put it this way. Every single time that I have prioritized the business over the customer, I have failed.
Interesting.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
How many more ways I have to learn that lesson.
But I love that lesson, by the way.
I'm done learning that lesson. Yeah.
I love that learning. So events, where are you guys taking it? What is the funnest event, or where do you want to go? Tell me a little more about events for you guys.
It to me, it's incredible to watch yet another generation. So it was millennials and now it's Gen Z really reinvent intentional micro communities, really create an identity around what we do and how we experience things. And, certainly going through a black swan event like the global pandemic has given me the confidence that what we're doing really matters and it's defensible, right? If we could survive the biggest, I think, existential crisis that could hit our business, we're unstoppable in terms of the future. And so the way we think about it is, how can we harness the power of all technology to bring to bear the connections that people are craving in real life? How can we make event creators more successful at what they do with less work so they can focus on the experience and the content? And how do we give every single person the right event at the right time, wherever they are, to really meet their needs? And as humans, I think we are in desperate need of in real life connections, and it just keeps getting more and more valuable. So I think about it as, we're enabling creators to do this work, to create these connections, to help people be in spaces together, to change the way they think, to grow deeper bonds, to feel connected to each other, to create indelible memories. And we need to get out of the way quickly when that magic happens, but continue to enable it to happen at scale.
I love it. What is like an event that you think was incredibly fun, or something you're looking forward to?
All the time I see things, so it's hard to pick one. But I think, lately I'm loving 3 things that are like squarely in the center of like, Gen Z trends. Puppy yoga. If you've never been to a puppy yoga class, you need to go
Puppy
pronto. It's a yoga class, but they bring in puppies. Like run around the studio. It's just amazing. I've never felt such like euphoria in a yoga class too, which like you unlock some strong feelings in a good yoga class. But wow, I mean,
that is so epic.
The delight. I'm loving silent book clubs where people are getting together en masse to sit silently and read the book.
Wow.
Because gone are the days that we can count on each other to actually read the book, So you get together and hold each other accountable, and then you're like just silently reading together. I love that. And then I also love, this sounds a little bit more on the nose, but I love running clubs right now, these run club events. I was just sitting in a black cab in London, stuck in traffic, and a run club was getting started right outside our cab. And I was like dying. I'm like clamoring over Kevin and taking pictures and stuff because I wanted to find out if it was on Eventbrite, because run clubs are massive right now. And the trend is around, singles joining a run club to then find their partner.
Nice.
But it was amazing. I mean, the way that they had it set up, they had like these backpacks with speakers on them. So it was like music, and they had, the leader had a mic, and he's like, okay, group 1, go, group, and they like kind of break the cohorts into people that they think would be good matches for each other. So it's like the next coming of, speed dating, but it's run club, and you're like, and it's just so amazing. I mean, I think, every day there's a new type of gathering that gets created. We actually sometimes create our own gatherings because we see these really interesting trends on the horizon, or we see, things that people love. And we recently just brought one to market called the Cheese Rave. Because EDM and raves are still going strong. It's probably like one of the strongest subcategories ever on Eventbrite. And then cheese tasting and like the fine art of cheese is also really like, hip with the kids these days. So we put the two together because cheese tastes different depending on what you're listening to.
This is so epic. I heard about it, but it's so weird.
And then we got Anton from Queer Eye to be our co-host, and it was amazing. It was in Brooklyn, and it was just people who got it, really got it, and we had these like cheese tasting stations and amazing music, and so I think it's our nod to the fact that you can create anything. It's the ultimate creative medium.
That's so innovative. Like, I love it. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing is, Julia, is how adaptive you are. And I think that's just so critical, especially as a leader, but also especially at this fast pace of change. Like, you have to run and adapt all the time. Otherwise, you stay behind and you lose relevance really quick. How do you feel? Like, how do you adapt? Like, do you learn a lot? Do you talk to a lot of? Do you have a lot of mentors? Like, who helps you?
Yeah, I learned from Kevin that the art of reaching out to a lot of people and hearing a lot of opinions and not attaching to one idea or one, way of doing it, and not, I think my own kind of way of thinking about that is I don't try to put anyone in the role of mentor, because I think that's a really heady title, and ultimately putting people on pedestals like that is pretty dangerous. But rather like thinking about it as there are different people in my life that I know I can call with a question who may have a great answer and makes you think differently about solving a problem. And I also think about it as she who lasts the longest wins. So I'm also sort of imagine the journey of a founder and a CEO is at times walking through the desert alone. And then I also think about it as, if I can continue to develop, to grow, to change, to push myself, to learn more, then I deserve to be in this position. So that really motivates me to always be learning. I mean, I'm an insatiable learner. I love to learn by doing. I don't love to sit in a classroom. and as a metaphor at all. But I think that this job is such a perfect fit for me because I'm learning every single day.
No, it's amazing. So if they're like, speaking of learning, maybe if there's like, we like to kind of end with like, if there's one thing that you kind of be able to talk to younger Julia, what would you say to her?
I definitely would say stop doubting yourself and you like recapture that time to sleep more. I mean, like my age, like sleep's so important. And I feel like I've lost a lot of it doubting myself, and that it's just silly. It's just not helpful to anybody. Not least of which you know. But yeah, I think just like spend more time sleeping, less time doubting.
Ooh, I like that. And for the reinventors and leapers that are listening to you, they want more for their life. They are trying to figure out what it is. What would you say?
Don't confuse safety with alignment, meaning like one of the hardest decisions that I have made and have had to make a lot of times is to change course and to break something that wasn't working, even despite it feeling safe, and, to not go the status quo. And like, that is sometimes what you need, to reinvent and to grow, because staying misaligned is it with the interest of your customers, with your ethics and morals, or, whatever it is, like that's way riskier than reinventing and taking the leap. And so, kind of always be thinking about that when you're afraid to take the leap. Ask yourself, are you doing it because are you staying because it feels safe? Or how can you grow and reinvent in a way that will actually lead to a much safer outcome, frankly? And then finally, I think like curiosity is one of the greatest skills of careers in the future. I think especially in the time that we're living in now, like no one, not even the people closest to it know where this is going to end up. And so instead of sitting around asking ourselves what's going to happen, be a part of it and learn about it and continue to grow and learn. And I mean, it's such a renaissance period of learning, I feel like right now. It's incredible.
Right. Well, I mean, it's incredible, right? If you can't predict the future, create it, right? I mean, it's like, it can definitely be part of that future. So, Julia, it's incredible to be following you and to see your growth and to see what you created. And we're huge fans of Eventbrite and just wishing, just love following you and so much success. Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was really fun.
So good. Thank you. More episodes that you're going to love are right around the corner, so definitely make sure to click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Also, who in your life should see this today? Do share this with them. This will inspire and help those you care about and helps us continue to bring amazing guests. And I will see you there.